The illusion of the grand arrival dominates the modern psyche, a deceptive whisper that a single, monumental shift will permanently alter the landscape of our lives. We tell ourselves that once the promotion lands, once the threshold of a specific salary is crossed, or once the perfect alignment of external circumstances occurs, the suffocating pressure of financial anxiety will finally dissolve. Yet, this is a profound misunderstanding of human nature and systemic behavior. The harsh reality of our psychological conditioning is that without a fundamental rewiring of how we perceive, control, and govern our resources, a higher income merely acts as an accelerant for more sophisticated forms of entrapment. It expands the cage, upgrades the luxury of the bars, and leaves the underlying vulnerability completely unchanged. True mastery over your domain does not begin with an external windfall. It begins with an internal, quiet, and relentless optimization of the territory you already occupy. Consider the phenomenon known to psychologists as lifestyle inflation, an automatic reflex of the unmonitored mind. When resources increase, our baseline for what we consider a necessity immediately shifts upward to meet that new reality, a process driven by hedonic adaptation. A professional receives a 20% raise, and within 90 days, that extra capital is entirely absorbed by a more premium vehicle, a slightly more prestigious zip code, and a collection of subtle, recurring conveniences. The math of their existence has changed, but the emotional calculus remains identical. They are still living paycheck to paycheck, operating under the identical level of existential stress, but now carrying a significantly heavier burden of maintenance. They have simply scaled their financial fragility. The problem was never the size of the inflow, it was the structural integrity of the container. But an even more dangerous psychological trap happens when we look at the historical precedent of societal engineering. In the wake of World War II, a devastated industrial landscape in Japan faced an existential crisis of scarcity, lacking the massive capital reserves of Western empires to rebuild its entire infrastructure overnight. They could not afford grand, sweeping overhauls or massive, expensive structural leaps. Instead, out of sheer necessity and philosophical depth, they turned to a methodology of radical incrementalism, an approach that would later become known globally as Kaizen, the practice of continuous, 1% improvements executed with uncompromising consistency. When this framework is extracted from the factory floor and integrated into the architecture of personal finance, it bypasses the primitive defenses of the human brain, transforming the chaotic struggle for survival into a calculated, inevitable accumulation of power. To understand why this approach succeeds where aggressive, white-knuckled deprivation fails, we must look at the neurological blueprint of the brain. The human subconscious is biologically hardwired for homeostatic preservation. It perceives sudden, drastic shifts in behavior, such as an overnight vow to slash spending by half or to entirely eliminate comfort, as an existential threat, triggering an immediate counterresponse of intense craving and psychological fatigue. This is why standard financial resolutions collapse within 3 weeks. The ego rebels against the sudden violence of the restriction. The 1% shift, however, operates entirely beneath the radar of your evolutionary defenses. It introduces an optimization so microscopic, so thoroughly unremarkable, that the mind does not flag it as a threat, allowing you to quietly alter your financial trajectory without triggering the internal friction of willpower depletion. Imagine the simple physics of a single grain of rice placed upon a barren stone. In isolation, it possesses no weight, commands no presence, and alters nothing about the environment. If you add 2 grains the following day, and 3 the day after, a casual observer walking past would perceive absolutely no change in the landscape. The stone appears just as empty as it did before. By the end of the first month, the accumulation remains minor, a negligible cluster easily scattered by a passing breeze. But if this microaction is sustained across 6 months, the silent mathematics of compounding begins to manifest as a visible phenomenon, accumulating into tens of thousands of grains. By the end of a year, that quiet, unceasing repetition has formed a heavy, undeniable mass that can no longer be moved by external forces. The environment has been entirely redefined, not through an act of overwhelming force, but through the terrifying power of uninterrupted accumulation. Most people fail to build an authentic financial foundation because they are psychologically addicted to visible drama. They demand immediate feedback to validate their efforts. They want the heroic narrative of a massive sacrifice or a singular, brilliant investment that rescues them from mediocrity, yet they despise the unglamorous, daily discipline of minor corrections. In the realm of wealth preservation, the early phases of optimization are completely invisible. Your bank account does not look radically different after a single week of minor adjustments. Your peer group notices no change in your status, and your internal sense of identity does not receive an immediate hit of dopamine. This invisibility is the exact point of failure where the undisciplined mind gives up, falsely concluding that the effort is pointless, unaware that the structural foundation is being poured beneath the surface. To build a fortress that cannot be shaken, this philosophy of relentless, microscopic refinement must be deployed simultaneously across three distinct strategic fronts: the systematic optimization of lifestyle friction, the intelligent escalation of capital retention, and the deliberate expansion of personal capability. The first front requires a calculated reassessment of hidden conveniences, those microtransactions and automatic subscriptions that quietly bleed an individual's financial energy without providing any genuine utility or deep fulfillment. By selecting just one minor spending pattern each month and reducing it by a fraction, you slowly reclaim your capital without ever experiencing the emotional shock of severe deprivation. You are not torturing yourself, you are simply removing the inefficiencies from your machine. The second front focuses on the mechanical escalation of your savings rate, an area where human emotion must be completely replaced by automated systems. If your current retention rate is low, attempting to force it to a massive percentage overnight is an exercise in self-sabotage that will inevitably lead to an aggressive rebound of spending. Instead, by adjusting your automated retention by a mere 0.5% or 1% each month, the lifestyle adjustments required are so gentle that your daily existence remains completely unaffected. Over a multi-year horizon, this micro-escalation compounds into a massive, permanent gap between what you earn and what you consume, ensuring that wealth is retained long before it can be intercepted by impulsive desires. The final and most critical front is the continuous, incremental enhancement of your own economic value. Wealth is ultimately a reflection of the leverage and rare skills you can offer to the marketplace, yet most individuals allow their intellectual capital to stagnate the moment they secure a stable position, dedicating a single hour each week to mastering a highly specific, high-leverage skill, whether it is advanced data analysis, psychological negotiation, or structural systems. Design creates an compounding asset that grows entirely independent of your daily job requirements. A 1% increase in competence every week does not manifest as an immediate promotion tomorrow, but over a 12-month cycle, it renders you significantly more capable than your peers, making an increase in your baseline earning capacity an absolute economic inevitability. There is an ancient, enduring piece of Eastern wisdom that reminds us that even the most massive mountain is, at its core, nothing more than an intentional accumulation of individual particles of dust. When two individuals enter the economic arena with identical resources, identical backgrounds, and identical salaries, their ultimate destinations are determined entirely by their relationship to this law of accumulation. The first individual chooses the path of passive waiting, remaining convinced that small actions are meaningless, and that they must wait for a massive macroeconomic shift or a corporate breakthrough before they begin to seriously govern their financial life. 5 years later, they find themselves trapped in the exact same loop of anxiety, completely unaware that their passivity has actively solidified their fragility. The second individual, however, rejects the illusion of the grand gesture and commits to the quiet discipline of the monthly 1% optimization. In the first 12 months, their life looks entirely indistinguishable from the first individual's. They wear the same clothes, work the same hours, and live in the same neighborhood. By year 3, a subtle divergence begins to appear, characterized by an unshakable calm and a growing reserve of unencumbered capital. By year 5, the divergence is absolute and irreversible. The second individual has purchased their complete autonomy, not because they possessed superior intelligence or experienced a stroke of extraordinary luck, but because they refused to allow a single month to pass without making one minor, honest adjustment to the architecture of their life. To implement this level of dominion within your own life, you must establish 3 non-negotiable rules of execution starting this month, completely independent of your current emotional state or financial positioning. The first rule is the automated 1% retention increment. You must configure your financial accounts to automatically divert an additional 1% of your total income into a secured, long-term asset. Reserve the exact day your capital arrives. If you currently retain nothing, you begin with 1%. If you retain 10%, you move to 11%. Because this capital is intercepted before it ever enters your field of vision, it is completely removed from your psychological spending pool, allowing it to accumulate quietly in the shadow of your daily life. The second rule demands the targeted reduction of a single habitual inefficiency every 30 days. You must identify one automated subscription, one recurring convenience charge, or one unexamined lifestyle luxury, and reduce its frequency or scale by a small, measurable margin. This is not an exercise in moral judgment or emotional self-punishment. It is a cold, objective audit of your operational efficiency. You document the exact capital saved by this single adjustment, allow that surplus to flow directly into your retention reserve, and then entirely forget about it as you prepare to audit the next inefficiency in the following month. The third rule is the weekly dedication of 1 uninterrupted hour to the aggressive cultivation of your primary economic leverage point. This hour must be treated with the same absolute reverence as a critical corporate meeting, a closed-door session where you isolate yourself from all digital distractions to study a complex mechanism, learn a specialized software system, or analyze the behavioral patterns of market leaders. You are not seeking a sudden epiphany or a radical transformation within a single session. You are simply adding one more layer of refinement to your intellectual armor, fully aware that a man who becomes 40% more competent across a single year can never be held at the same economic baseline by the marketplace. When you look at those who have successfully transitioned from the exhausting loop of financial survival to a state of permanent, unshakable autonomy, you discover that their journey was entirely devoid of the cinematic drama popularized by modern media. They did not rely on speculative gambles, temporary bursts of hypermanic motivation, or flawless external conditions. They simply stopped waiting for the world to change around them and instead chose to master the minor variables within their immediate control. They recognized that the distance between financial bondage and total sovereignty is composed entirely of tiny, unremarkable steps taken with an iron consistency that outlasts the superficial enthusiasm of the masses. This systematic transformation alters your relationship with reality itself, shifting your internal identity from a passive consumer at the mercy of economic tides to an active architect of your own stability. As the months progress, the accumulation of these micro-decisions begins to generate its own gravitational pull, creating a momentum that completely redefines what you believe is possible. The individual who masters the 1% shift no longer looks at a massive financial objective as an impossible, distant mountain. They see it for what it truly is: a sequence of predictable, minor executions, waiting to be systematically realized over time. The true deception of lifestyle anxiety is that it paralyzes us into inaction by making the final destination feel utterly unreachable from where we currently stand. We look at our existing obligations, our current income, and the scale of our long-term aspirations, and the sheer gap between reality and the ideal state induces a state of executive dysfunction. But the mountain does not care about your overwhelm. It expands or contracts based entirely on the simple mechanics of what you choose to deposit upon it today. The ultimate trajectory of your financial autonomy is determined not by the grand, sweeping choices you promise to make in the future, but by the silent, invisible optimizations you choose to enforce right now. This quiet enforcement begins the moment you shift your focus away from the distant horizon and place it squarely upon the immediate, microscopic boundaries of your daily routine. Consider the individual who wakes up every morning carrying the silent weight of a mounting credit balance or a stagnant savings pool. Their natural instinct is to wait for the tax refund, the annual bonus, or the unexpected inheritance to wipe the slate clean in one heroic stroke. They look at a $10,000 debt or a $50,000 investment goal, and because their current monthly surplus is only $50, they conclude that minor contributions are an exercise in futility. What they fail to perceive is that the $50 is not merely a financial unit, it is a psychological seed. By treating that minor surplus with absolute reverence and directing it toward its destination with mechanical precision, they are training the subconscious mind to accept a new structural reality. The mechanics of this internal shift are deeply tied to the psychological concept of self-efficacy. When an individual continuously sets massive, unattainable goals, every failure to reach them reinforces an internal narrative of helplessness, convincing the ego that financial control is an inherent trait possessed by others but denied to them. Conversely, when you reduce the target to an absurdly manageable level, such as saving an extra $2 a day or reading 3 pages of a technical manual each evening, you guarantee a sequence of uninterrupted victories. These microscopic wins accumulate like compound interest within your identity. You begin to view yourself as someone who executes their intentions, a person whose decisions carry real weight and measurable consequences. This subtle shift in self-perception alters how you carry yourself in negotiations, how you evaluate risks, and how you respond to unexpected economic turbulence. As this new identity solidifies, the external environment naturally begins to reorganize itself around your altered behavior. In the corporate landscape, this manifests as a silent but noticeable elevation in your professional posture. The worker who spends their weekends in a state of anxious dissipation enters the office on Monday morning with a palpable energy of scarcity, constantly scanning the environment for threats and reacting impulsively to workplace politics. But the individual who spent just 1 hour on Saturday morning systematically breaking down the pricing architecture of their company's primary competitor operates from a position of emerging leverage. Point A. They possess a granular clarity that their peers lack. When they speak in strategic meetings, their insights are grounded in structural data rather than superficial opinion. They do not need to beg for recognition or engage in overt self-promotion. Their increased competence speaks a quiet, authoritative language that commands the attention of decision-makers. Furthermore, this incremental optimization builds an invisible psychological buffer that alters your relationship with risk itself. When you live at the absolute edge of your financial capacity, every minor unexpected expense, a mechanical failure in your vehicle, a sudden medical premium, or a temporary corporate restructuring is experienced as an existential crisis. This perpetual state of high-alert cortisol completely degrades your long-term decision-making capacity, forcing you to optimize for immediate survival rather than strategic advancement. You accept suboptimal employment terms, tolerate toxic management, and pass up highly lucrative, calculated risks because you cannot afford a single week of disruption. But as your 1% accumulations begin to form a modest, liquid reserve, the nature of your reality undergoes a fundamental transformation. The emergency that would have previously shattered your psychological stability for a month is reduced to a minor, administrative inconvenience. You have purchased your first taste of true leverage, the ability to say no. This newfound leverage is where the compounding nature of the strategy truly enters its exponential phase, with a secure foundation beneath your feet and a continuously expanding skill set. You are no longer operating from a defensive posture. You can look at the marketplace with cold, analytical objectivity, identifying systemic inefficiencies and positioning yourself to exploit them. If a premium professional certification requires 50 hours of focused study, the undisciplined mind sees an insurmountable wall of effort and abandons the pursuit before it begins. The incremental strategist, however, simply maps out 50 individual blocks of 1 hour across the upcoming season, quietly absorbing the material in the margins of their existing life. By the time their peers notice the transition, the strategist has already secured the credential, internalized the knowledge, and positioned themselves for a non-linear leap in their earning potential. When that leap inevitably arrives, and the external windfall finally materializes in the form of a significant promotion or a successful venture, the structured container is already fully prepared to receive it. Because the internal architecture has been meticulously optimized through months or years of microscopic discipline, the sudden influx of new capital does not trigger the destructive reflex of lifestyle inflation. The mind has already been conditioned to find its dopamine in the process of structural mastery rather than the superficial thrill of conspicuous consumption. The extra income is not scattered across an array of premium upgrades, luxury subscriptions, and escalating liabilities. Instead, it is immediately captured by the automated systems already in place, flowing directly into the wealth fortress to accelerate the timeline of absolute autonomy. Ultimately, the path of radical incrementalism frees you from the exhausting necessity of relying on perpetual willpower. Willpower is a finite, volatile resource that drains rapidly under the pressures of daily life, leaving you highly vulnerable to impulsive regression when you are tired, stressed, or emotionally depleted. By replacing the erratic energy of motivation with the cold, unyielding predictability of automated routines and micro-habits, you remove human frailty from the equation entirely. You no longer need to summon the emotional strength to make the right choice. Every single day, you simply design an environment where the right choice is the default, frictionless path of least resistance. The systems you construct carry the burden of execution for you, working quietly in the background while you direct your conscious energy toward higher levels of strategic creation. As you step forward into this disciplined framework, let go of the frantic desire for immediate validation and the hollow promise of the sudden breakthrough. Recognize that the ultimate measure of your economic sovereignty is not found in the grandiosity of your statements or the temporary status symbols you display to the world, but in the silent, mathematical integrity of your daily execution. Trust the unseen weight of the single grain of rice. Commit to the unglamorous, relentless pursuit of the next 1% optimization, knowing with absolute certainty that every minor boundary you secure, every hidden inefficiency you eliminate, and every microscopic skill you master is an intentional stone laid upon the foundation of an unbreakable empire. Do not seek the harvest in the first week, nor attempt to measure the mountain within the first month. A single particle of dust does not resemble a monolithic summit on its initial day. It remains merely dust, fulfilling its quiet, necessary reality. This slow accumulation demands an absolute detachment from the modern addiction to immediate validation. True mastery requires you to endure the invisible phase of growth, where your daily choices seem entirely inconsequential to the untrained eye. It is within this psychological crucible that most men fail, retreating into familiar chaos because their superficial efforts do not yield immediate luxury. To withstand this, you must undergo a profound identity shift, transitioning from a reactive consumer seeking short-term comfort into a patient architect of a lasting legacy. The internal landscape must change before the external empire can manifest. As you look toward the next horizon, the next crucial frontier in your financial sovereignty lies in understanding your psychological relationship with leverage and obligation. The ancient frameworks of honor dictate that a sovereign mind never binds itself to unsustainable debt, recognizing that borrowing from the future inevitably enslaves the present. By re-evaluating what you truly owe to yourself, you align your economic actions with a timeless philosophy of restraint. The path to absolute autonomy is forged not through loud, sudden breakthroughs, but through the silent, compounding victories of the disciplined self. The choice is no longer about merely managing currency, it is about reclaiming the total governance of your mind. Let the world chase the fleeting illusions of instant status while you build your foundation in the dark, stone by meticulous stone. Your ultimate dominion is waiting, constructed not from the erratic bursts of inspiration, but from the unyielding, mathematical certainty of your daily execution. Step forward into the quiet majesty of your own unfolding empire.